Rocking the Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. That's a fleet.
Yeah.
It's a fleet.
That's our salvation right there, man.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 18 and verse 20. It reads, "For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them." Shalom, shalom. Call Allah Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Kakurash. Salakia. Double honor to the elders and apostles of the great millstone who rule and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations unto the hopeful elect, and to the few sincere Aquath and who believe in truth and sincerity. I say shalom. And the brother Kabari Allah, back at you with another lesson. Alright, and this lesson is going to be entitled something along the lines of Salakia, I had it pulled up. Something along the lines of tons of chariots around the camp. The Lord is with us. Alright, so quick testimony before I actually begin the lesson. Alright, I was in the I was at the cap with the Akim. Alright. I was in the camp with the Akim today, which is October 25th, 2025, and we were listening, or I was listening to the camp, to the brothers preaching, and then I heard the elder Barak. He said, "Yo, what the fuck is that?" And I heard this, and I go to look, and then they're like, "Yo, those are chariots." Yo, those are chariots out there. And then we see it. We see the chariots and all. And we were all just giving praises to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, um, and you can see it in the clip. It's a small little snippet of it, but towards the beginning of the clip, you can't really see nothing, but towards the end of it is where it all goes down. It's where all the chariots you see, um, pretty much gathered there, man. And I just wanted to make a quick lesson on that, to show brothers that, and to give brothers hope, and inspiration that, we're almost out of here, bro. I mean, we're not gonna be here for much longer, and I speak as, a newer brother. I've only been in this truth for about, 3, 4 years, you know, and I still got a long way to go, man. But the brothers, the elders who have been in this truth since, phew, shit, forever now, it's been a long time, and they have this, eagerness to leave. Obviously, of course, as we all do. We should all have an eagerness to leave this fucking hellhole. But anyways, that's why I opened up with the book of Matthew, chapter 18, and verse 20. It goes on and it reads, "For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them." All right. And we only see this, or I've only seen this with the men of the Lord, being the men of Great Millstone and on down. You know, I've never, or not that I watch other camps, but I've never even heard of other camps even see chariots. So this shows you that the Lord has his people, has his men set up. Okay. Now, I noticed that some newer people, Akim, have subscribed to my channel, over the past couple weeks. So if you don't know what a chariot is, I'm gonna get into that real quick. But pretty much when you search up chariot, what is a chariot in Google, it'll tell you a two-wheeled horse-drawn vehicle used in ancient warfare and racing. Now, what I want you to grab from this is that it's a vehicle. Okay, a chariot is a sort of vehicle. All right, it's a vehicle. Okay, and when we say chariot, we're obviously not referring to these vehicles because we're referring to something in the sky. Okay, And when two or three are gathered in the midst of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, or it can just be you, you out there preaching, you may be able to see a chariot, which is pretty much what the world would ignorantly call a UFO. Okay? Which a UFO, it's not actually a UFO, as the elder Apostle Gabar loves to say. It's an IFO. It's an identified flying object. Because we have identified it, we being the elders and apostles of the Great Millstone, and those who follow their doctrine. Okay, we have identified it, or they have identified it to be a chariot. Okay, a UFO, if you will, which is really not a UFO, it's a chariot. So we know what it is. Okay. Now, if we go to the book of Zechariah, chapter 5, okay, 5, we'll start from the top. Zechariah chapter 5 and verse 1, it says, "And I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll." So he's lifting up his eyes, so he is seeing this thing in the sky. Okay, he's seeing this thing in the sky. All right, and he describes it as a flying roll. Okay, now, real quick. And when a flying roll pretty much being like a book, something you can read off of, a book. So there's obviously it's not like someone threw a book that high and it's just gliding through the air. No, it's describing it to what they could use to describe it as. Okay, they don't have the same terminology that we do now. They had ancient terminology that we given the Lord has to give you the understanding and the spirit to actually understand these mysteries. Okay, because these are mysteries to these other people because they don't understand it. These people don't understand it. They won't get it because the spirit isn't given to them. All right, but if you can understand and you can receive it, the Lord is, you're supping with the Lord right now, man. So it says, Zechariah 5 and verse 1, "And then I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll." Verse 2 it says, "And he said unto me, What seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll." Okay, it says the length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 10 cubits. So as Zechariah is giving an estimate of how big, how uh, how big it is, how big or how small it is, and cubit is a measure of distance. Okay, it's a measure of distance. Pretty much, 1 cubit, I believe. Let me check it. Yeah, it's a measurement. So the word cubit goes back to a cubit, a measurement of distance, roughly 18 inches, okay, or 0.5 meters. All right. So 1 cubit is half a meter. So if it's telling you right now 20 cubits, it's telling you it's 10 meters, okay? 10 meters wide or long, slacky, 10 meters long and about 5 meters in width, in the breadth, all right? So Zechariah saw this chariot, man. All right, and it says, verse 3, then said he unto me, This is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. And why is it a curse to these? Why is it a curse and we're celebrating? Is it a curse to what exactly is this curse? Okay, it's referring to a curse being to these people because the Lord is going to use chariots to cast beams and cause judgment. Okay, the Lord uses these chariots to cause judgment as well. All right. It says, For everyone that stealeth shall be cut off as on the side according to it, and everyone that sweareth shall be cut off as the side according to it. I will bring it forth, saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name, and it shall remain in the midst of his house, and shall consume it with timber thereof, and of stones thereof. Alright, so pretty much saying that the Lord is going to use this to cause chaos for these individuals, okay, for these people who are going out, for the 2/3, you know. But for us, it is a means of salvation, okay, as we saw Elijah was translated, okay. When you go to the book of Second Kings, all right, 2, I think it said 11, yeah, 11. So Second Kings chapter 2. I'll start at verse. Oh, I can start from the top, but I'll just get to the point for the sake of time. And verse 10, and he said, "Thou hast," verse 9. And it came to pass when they were gone over that Elijah said unto, actually I can, uh, man, because I really want to get yeah, I'll just get straight to the point because it might be too much for, well, it is milk, but I'll just start off at verse 9. Second Kings 2 and 9. And it came to pass when they were gone over that Elijah said unto Elisha, ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee. Okay, so Elijah already knew that he was going to get taken away. You know, what does it mean by getting taken away? We're going to read that right now. And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. So Elisha is asking, for more of the spirit of the Lord. All right, it says, and he said, thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. Okay. It says in verse 11, and it came to pass as they went on and talked that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire. Okay, so this chariot, like we mentioned, is that thing that appeared, the flying roll, okay, which is not really a UFO, would be a so-called slacky. It would be a so-called UFO. Okay, it's not really a flying roll, but we know that those are the vehicles of the Lord as we describe them to be vehicles. All right, they are also described as the eyes of Yahweh Shai, or the clouds. Okay, the scriptures say we will meet the Lord in the clouds. Okay, because that's how we're going to get salvation. We're going to get beamed up into a chariot. It says, and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Okay, so Elijah was translated. Okay, Elijah was beamed up into that chariot, and it says verse 12, and Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel, the horsemen thereof, and saw him no more. And he took hold of his clothes and rent them into two pieces. He also took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and went back and stood by the bank of Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that went from him, and smote the waters, and said, where is the Lord Yahweh Shai, power of Elijah? And when he had smitten the waters, they parted hither, and Elisha went over. So showing you that the Lord, that Elijah pretty much, it's like Elisha was given, because he saw Elijah get beamed up to the chariots. And if you were paying attention, Elijah said that Elisha would be given a double portion of his spirit if he was able to see it. She was able to see it to the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Okay, so that's an account. And real quick, I'm gonna grab right here. Actually, I'm gonna jump to the book of Isaiah 31, but let me prep this real quick. All right, because this is a very important thing to know in this ministry. Okay, all right. because the Lord described it also as being strange. Okay, the salvation being strange. Okay, but real quick, also, all right, but yeah, going to the book of Isaiah, chapter 31, and I'll just get straight to the point in verse 5. Verse 4. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai spoken unto me, like as the lion and the young lions roaring on his prey, when a multitude of shepherds is called forth against him, he will not be afraid of their voice, abase himself from the voice of them. So shall the Lord Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai of hosts shall come down to fight for Mount Zion and for the hill thereof. Okay, so the Lord is coming down to prepare, his chariots to help us fight. Help us fight this fight. When all hell is breaking loose, these are gonna be our protections. As flying birds, so will the Lord Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai of hosts defend Jerusalem. Okay, and we talked about it being flying again. All right, those being the chariots because they're flying. Okay, just like birds. All right, they're in the chariot, they're in the air, going up and down, and now you're starting to see the significance of what we saw today. We saw not only the vehicle and the mechanism of how we're going to be saved, but also the destruction of this place and the destruction of these people. Okay, it says, defending also he will deliver it, and passing over he will preserve it. So that's the beauty of this, man. So now when you go, that's why it's looked at so strangely, because these things are going to be killing these individuals, and we're going to be, we're celebrating, we're we're praising the Lord for these vehicles. So that's these people don't find it, they find it strange, And the beautiful thing about it was that when we were seeing these chariots, we were giving praise. These people was walking past and none the wiser, because they don't understand. Hell no, they don't understand. All right, now going to the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5 and verse 1. It reads, then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him, and make no account of his labors. Right, because we're going to be standing boldly in that day. The scriptures say that the elder Yerah brought it, that the feeble of us will be as King David, which was brought out of camp. And uh, King David was the greatest warrior to run this planet, ever. To roam this planet, Slakia. So the most feeble, the weakest individual will be as King David. And King David wasn't no sucker, man. King David was fierce. King David was feared, man, as he rightfully should have been. All right, and King David, is going to be the king to rule Jerusalem. Once it's all established, okay, that he will be the king of Israel. All right, King David, man. It says, verse 2, here's the point. When they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear, and shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation. Right, going into the strangeness of the salvation of the elect, the 144,000. Okay, it says, for so far beyond all that they looked for. Right, man, because they're not going to be able to get it. Verse 3, and they repenting and groaning for anguish of spirit, shall they say within themselves, this was he whom we had sometimes in derision, and a proverb of reproach, right? Because they're constantly making fun of us for doing this work. They're constantly, thinking that this isn't gonna go anywhere. They're constantly, thinking we're weird and shit. Calling us names, and they won't say it to your face because they're too much cowards to say it to your face. Okay, but they're thinking it, and they'll talk amongst themselves and shit, but they'll never say it to your face, man. It says, verse 4. We fools accounted for his madness. It's like we fools accounted his life madness. Right. So now they're gonna get into that phase where they're thinking back like, oh shit. Here it is, these chariots, these things are attacking us and they're protecting them. Okay. It says, and his end is to be without honor, right? Your end is gonna be without honor, man. Because you're gonna have none. nothing to be, you're gonna have nothing, man. It says, how is he numbered among the children of Yahweh? And his lot is among the saints, right, man? That's our lot among the saints. Okay, amongst the people of the Slacky, the servants of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Verse 6, therefore we have erred from the way of truth, and the light of righteousness hath not shined unto us. The Son of righteousness rose not upon us. Right, man? They have erred, like the scriptures say, they have erred not knowing the scriptures, man. You know, because they don't put time into to study for their power, to study for the Lord, the creator of the universe. You know, so why is the Lord gonna take time to help you? You know, no, man, that's not how it works. We have to serve the Lord in all truth and sincerity. You know, the Lord don't gotta do jack shit for us, man. We owe everything to the Lord. You know, so that's the mentality you gotta have. The Lord don't owe you nothing. You owe everything to the Lord. You owe your life to the Lord. You know, that's why the scriptures say in Sirach 2:1, if you come to serve that Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation, man. You know, and the scriptures also say, present your body as a living sacrifice. Okay, but going back to the topic of, we'll close out here, book of First Thessalonians, chapter 4, and verse 16. For the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai himself shall descend from heaven. It's like for the Lord Yahushai, because Yahushai is going to be the one that's going to deliver us, you know. It says, from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of his archangel, and with the trump of Yahweh, and the dead in Hamashiach shall rise first, right? Because there's going to be some individuals who are going to have to die for this ministry, you know, in the end times. You know, my sister had a vision about back in July, Slakia, back in July, that pretty much, you know, we was in a safe house, you know, and you know there was a lot of dead people. Okay, so there's gonna be some, you know, brothers and individuals who are gonna die that honorable death, you know, but they're gonna be the first ones to rise. They're gonna be right there with Yahushai, you know. They're gonna rise instantly. Then they're gonna die, and they're gonna give them their new bodies, and they're gonna be right back. You know, it says verse 17. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds. Right? What do you think that means, man? You're gonna get beamed up into a chariot and be able to look the Lord in his eyes, man. Yahushai. You're gonna be face to face with Yahushai, man, in them clouds. To meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord, man. Wherefore comfort one another with these words, and this gives us great comfort. That's why when we saw those chariots, we was all giving praises and honor to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. Because that is something that we're striving for, you know, to make it into one of those. Lord willing we be of those men, man. So, you know, that's pretty much the lesson, man. You know, like I said, I didn't want to get too long, but Lord willing was edifying, Lord willing was uplifting. Call Allah Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. Shalom.